fading light of dusk, a solitary figure stands at the edge of a quiet forest, their silhouette dissolving inch by inch into a gathering mist. The world seems to hold its breath, watching as this person, once vivid and sharp against the horizon, softens into nothingness, becoming almost a whisper, swallowed by the dark. It's a horizon painted with shadows and silence, where absence is the loudest kind of presence. This moment, tender and slow, carries within it a question heavy with quiet despair and aching mystery. Why do some people vanish when the weight of life grows unbearable? Why do they retreat from the ordinary pathways of connection, slipping away not with a declaration but with the softness of a secret dissolved in twilight? We watch this vanishing, often with confusion or judgment, unable to grasp the invisible landscape they cross when they disappear. Behind the silence is something more than simply leaving, a retreat that suggests not just loss but survival, not surrender, but a strange kind of strength. What is it that pulls someone away from the gaze of the world, into the shadows where they seem to dissolve, becoming less themselves, less seen, less known? This is a story about the vanishing self, about those tender, difficult moments when a person steps back, fades out, and in that fading reveals a complexity of fear, pain, and a longing not to be overwhelmed. It is an invitation to lean into the silence, to understand the spaces people occupy when they vanish, and to listen closely to what it means to disappear, not just from sight, but from the self we know. To vanish, in its simplest sense, is to become invisible. But invisibility is never just a physical state. It is loaded with contradiction and paradox. The act of disappearing can be read as weakness, a fleeing from life when the trouble grows too fierce. But beneath this surface judgment lies something deeper, a fragile, secret strength that moves quietly beneath the skin. The psychological landscape behind vanishing is marked by a tension between connection and protection. On one hand, there's the human need for attachment, for reaching toward others and feeling known. On the other, there is an instinct to shield oneself from wounding, to retreat into shadows when the world feels too sharp to bear. This pushes us into the territory explored by attachment theory, particularly the avoidant attachment style, where intimacy triggers a subtle recoil, a holding back, a withdrawal that looks like absence. Yet it is not just about fear, it is about the way the self divides, how parts of identity become hidden in order to survive. Carl Jung described this hidden realm as the shadow, the collection of traits, fears, and memories we bury beneath consciousness. When life becomes unbearable, the shadow can swallow pieces of self, causing them to vanish from the light of awareness and from the reach of others. Another layer is dissociation, a defense mechanism where the self detaches from experience as a way to tolerate trauma or overwhelming stress. What feels like a person disappearing is sometimes the mind's attempt to preserve itself by slamming doors shut inside. So the paradox is this: vanishing is both a loss and a form of survival, a retreat that carries a kind of strength, and a silence that speaks of hidden depths. Understanding why people disappear when life gets hard asks us to hold these tensions gently, to see vanishing not as failure, but as a complex psychological dance between self-preservation and the yearning for connection. It invites us to walk softly through the fog of absence and recognize the hidden stories carried in the spaces where people fade away. In the slow unraveling of why selves vanish, attachment theory offers a compelling lens. Psychologists observe that those with an avoidant attachment style often respond to stress by pulling back, by creating distance when others seek closeness. This isn't a simple choice, but an ingrained survival pattern. When intimacy or hardship arises, the avoidant self recoils, fence building against potential pain. It's a retreat from connection not born of indifference, but of a complex choreography between the longing for closeness and the fear of engulfment. This internal push and pull can feel like vanishing into thin air, a withdrawal not just from others, but also from parts of themselves they fear will shatter upon exposure. Alongside, Jung's concept of the shadow reveals how parts of the self, painful memories, unacknowledged emotions, or traits deemed unacceptable, are pushed into darkness. When life crushes too heavy, the shadow expands. The self, fractured by conflict or trauma, hides more deeply, retreating from the light of consciousness and the warmth of social engagement. This hiding is not quitting, but a complex defense, a way to guard fragile identity fragments without shattering completely. Dissociation intensifies this vanishing. When trauma or overwhelming stress strikes, the mind may fragment experience, creating a separation between self and moment, like stepping outside of one's body or mind. This psychological fog is a protective mist, blurring edges until the self is no longer whole or seen in full clarity. To the world, this can feel like disappearance, sometimes temporary, sometimes extended. But it is the self's last effort to survive unbearable pain. These layers, attachment avoidance, the shadow's concealment, dissociative detachment, combine to create the vanishing self. It is a self that isn't gone but folded inward, turned away from eyes that might judge or fail to understand. To experience this vanishing is to live in margins, to exist partially in absence with a constant tension between needing to be found and wanting to be left alone. There is a rhythm here, a slow dance of appearing and withdrawing, an ebbing tide beneath the surface of visible life. To witness a person vanish is to witness a human being navigating the raw edge between exposure and survival. It is not weakness, but a complex, if fragile, form of strength. Some disappearances ripple like a quiet wave, only to re-emerge transformed. Others remain shrouded in silence, carrying secrets and shadows that never fully return to light. Yet in every vanishing, there is the haunting beauty of a self holding on in its own way, fragile, fractured, yet persistently surviving against the storm's pull. And in this, there is a silent testimony to the depth of human pain, resilience, and the profound mystery of identity itself. To hold the story of the vanishing self is to move beyond simple narratives of loss and failure. It requires a meditation on what it means to disappear not as defeat, but as a deeply human response to unbearable circumstance. Imagine the quiet solitude of a person stepping back from a crowded room, the noise of life receding into a soft echo. This stepping back is not absence, but a retreat into inner landscape, a place of fragility, fear, but also a kind of hidden refuge. It's a space where the self is both lost and found in the same breath. When we understand vanishing this way, the urge to judge dissolves into empathy. We begin to see that the person who walks away is not lesser, but living a complex truth about how identity bends and folds in response to pain. There is a profound loneliness here, a knowing of the self fractured and exposed to harsh winds, sheltering beneath layers of silence and shadow. And yet, this loneliness carries with it a quiet hope. Hope not for dramatic returns or heroic transformations, but for the gentle possibility of presence, being with oneself in the dark, with no need to perform or explain. The vanishing becomes a space where reconciliation with the self begins. In the stillness, the fragmented pieces may whisper to each other, to start conversations that were too painful before. It is a holding pattern of the soul, a slow reimagining of identity when the old forms no longer fit or feel safe. This moment of reflection is where understanding turns toward compassion, both for those who vanish and for those left wanting to understand. Compassion softens the sharp edges of fear and confusion, allowing a new language to emerge, one that honors silence, absence, and the delicate interplay of presence and disappearance. To reflect on vanishing is to sit quietly with the mystery of selfhood that escapes easy grasp, and to acknowledge the courage it takes simply to endure. It is a meditation on resilience, not as conquest, but as survival in the shadows, an embrace of the incomplete and the hidden. In this stillness, we glimpse the human heart in all its complexity, pain, and quiet longing. There is a final quietness in the realization that vanishing is not simply erasure, but a rhythm, a breathing in and out of selfhood at the edges of visibility. It isn't about abandoning life or giving up. It's about finding refuge in the spaces between presence and absence, between being known and being unseen. The paradox that vanishing is both a form of retreat and a secret strength lingers like the last light before night fully falls. It wasn't about surrender, it was about survival. It wasn't about weakness, it was about preservation. Just as a cracked mirror doesn't lose its ability to reflect, only its completeness, so too the self can fracture and still hold truths within its broken pieces. In this fracturing, something begins anew, a softer, quieter way of being that holds both light and shadow with gentle acceptance. The vanishing self teaches us that presence is not always loud or obvious. Sometimes presence is the slow dissolving into mist, the shadow retreating from the heat of day, the silence that speaks louder than words. It isn't about perfection, it is about presence. And maybe, in that gentle vanishing, there is room for all the parts of a self too fragile to face the world at full strength. A self that fades is not lost, it is quietly waiting, gathering enough light to return when the time is right.